I've used IPLs now since around 2000, 2001, so after 13 or 14 years. The critical thing I found with intense pulse light devices is that most of them can do a capable job of treating pigmented lesions. The more challenging part with most IPLs is to work the dance of cooling and heating to effectively treat vessels, because particularly in even slightly darker skin, vessel destruction becomes fairly challenging for most IPLs.
I don't really have a favorite InMode technology. I like all of the different parts of the puzzle. So I think when you look at it, you have to break down. So the Lumecca is the IPL part of it. I'm an IPL guy, so it's sort of where I started in this business. And I think that what we've seen over time, and Lumecca is one of those is over time, these are much more sophisticated devices than when I was a young kid in this business. And so, with this type of technology for photo rejuvenation, red spots, brown spots, getting some skin rejuvenation as well, now we have a technology that's proven, it's sophisticated, it works, and you're not going to have the worries that I might have had 20 years ago. So I like Lumecca.
Lumecca really is a third generation intense pulse light device, because the early devices going back over 20 years ago already, we all know, they had an effect, they weren't very selective, they hurt terribly, and there were so many burns that occurred with them. Over the course of the next 20 years, intense pulse light devices improved remarkably, mostly because of the cooling. And so they came out with much better cooling devices. We didn't always have to use just a gel. That made them much safer. They could be used to treat brown spots, red spots, even some hair removal. But in the end, the flaw of intense pulse light devices has always been that you have a broad group of wavelengths. And you're good at lots of things, but maybe not so good at anything. What makes Lumecca very different is we have filtering now that is not only at the beginning, which is true for all intense pulse lights, we block out lower wavelengths, but historically all intense pulse lights then let out all the wavelengths beyond that certain number, let's say 515. Lumecca is different because there is a filter at the beginning and there's also a filter at the end, so that we're actually delivering wavelengths now that are much like using a KTP laser, much like using a pulse dye laser. So we've got the selectivity of a laser, yet it's in an intense pulse light. And that's what makes Lumecca very different. And what that's led to is results, which we knew we'd get, but actually quicker results than we historically see with other intense pulse lights.
Well, I think the advantage of Lumecca is you have some options. You have an option, but they're simple options. Rather than having pulse durations that range from very short to very long and having lots of different pulse duration ranges, there's a short and a long for pulse duration, which can allow you to have more epidermal preservation as you go to a longer pulse and also less risk of purpura. And a second option is whether you want regular cooling or strong cooling. So the strong cooling option is particularly effective for darker skin, and I find that to be helpful for comfort as well.
So some of the best feedback I get from patients is on the Lumecca. I currently have a broadband light system and a variable pulse light system. Neither one are very popular because they're uncomfortable and they're not as efficacious as I'd like, either for pigment or especially for vascular lesions. I think those are a little bit more difficult to get good results with. And I find with the Lumecca, the results are really excellent. The downtime is quite a bit less than either of those other systems, and patient comfort is superb. I find that with most of the old style IPLs, it's extremely painful. Every pulse is very uncomfortable, and it leaves a brown, crusty scab, and the Lumecca does not.
And so I think IPL is a good starter for patients who haven't had any previous treatments. It's, real easy to tolerate. It just feels like the snap of a rubber band. The downtime is just a few days.
And then we start talking to them about Lumecca and about IPL. And it's very funny because I generally have this look from patients where they go, oh, IPL, I've had IPL. I had IPL years ago. It didn't do anything. And the best part of my day is looking at them and being like, no, you have not had IPL like this. Lumecca is just such a completely different technology that it's exciting to look at a patient and say, not only are we going to get rid of your brown spots and your red spots, we're going to do it in 1 or 2 treatments. None of this 4, 5, 6 series of treatments like you used to have to do for IPL. Generally, I have people coming back after their first treatment just beaming and excited and so happy and pleased with how the improvement that they've seen. You know, dramatic improvements in lentigines, really nice improvements in background redness and blood vessels. You know, we're really finding that most of the time we're not even doing a second treatment, or if we are, we're doing a very small touch-up treatment with it. So overall, I've been extremely happy, and my patients have been even more satisfied.
Yeah, my patients are finding out about Lumecca primarily via word of mouth, which is our best referral source. So if a patient has it done and their friend likes it, then they'll come in and their friend will like it, and then we have more and more patients. And it's a balance of comfort and recovery. We try to have the patients aggressively treated to the point where they have a nice response, but not so much that they have any risk of blistering or severe crusting, and also where we can maintain comfort during the procedure.
I've used many of the top IPL devices on the market, and the reason I love Lumecca IPL is because you need fewer treatments with better results.
And I think Lumecca by InMode is a great option because it's very well powered. And I think a lot of the devices that are on the market, that isn't always the case. And so when I tell my patients what to expect when I counsel them, I usually tell them in general it'll take 3 or 4 treatments, but with the Lumecca, they come back after one and they ask me if they really need a second or a third treatment. So they're, you know, it's very well powered, and I'm seeing very good results with just 1 or 2 treatments.
And then we also know that intense pulse light technology, by its very nature, improves collagen. So if you take your typical photo damage individual who's got some reds, has some browns, yellowing of their skin just doesn't look good, and you bring them through a series of Lumecca, you're going to transform their skin. Yeah,
I have a nurse who is about 68 years old, and she's still working and wanted to maintain a professional appearance. I had done a facelift on her about 20 years ago, and the effects of this were starting to diminish, and she had developed some jowling. She had a lot of pigment, especially peripheral pigment, and she had a lot of broken blood vessels in the cheek area and around her nose. And she felt like she looked tired, and she did not want that result. So she came in for 3 treatments, and the first treatment we did a combination of Forma and Lumecca. The second treatment we did a combination of Forma and Fractora, and then the third treatment we did Forma and Lumecca again. She had such a fabulous result because she looked like she got a facelift, and she had no more jowl, and the apple of her cheek went from here to here. You can see in a close-up all the little blood vessels on her nose were gone, but an unexpected result was that her pores were greatly diminished as well. And this is a result that I can't achieve with any other device that I have.